Hello and welcome to Dialogue. Leaders from 21 Pacific Rim economies have gathered in the Republic of Korea for this year's APEC meetings under the theme Shared Growth Through Openness and Innovation. In his keynote speech, Chinese President Xi Jinping called for safeguarding the multilateral trading system, deepening regional integration, and ensuring that development benefits all. So what key signals are coming out of this year's APEC? How is China positioning itself as a stabilizing force for openness, cooperation, and shared growth? And can APEC still serve as a driving engine for regional integration and global recovery amid a world increasingly marked by fragmentation? Join us for our discussion today, live from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Well, joining me today are Professor Liu Baocheng from the University of International Business and Economics, Susanna Tjhin, Director of the Gentala Institute in Indonesia, and John Pang, Senior Fellow of the Belt and Road Initiative Caucus for Asia Pacific. Welcome to the show. So, Christine, I will start with you. The event is taking place against the background of the U.S. Protectionist trade policies, tariffs, which is punitive, let's say. So what's your reading of the gathering?
Hi, Chinto. Thank you for having me. I think the event is very much important for a lot of countries in the region because we are actually facing a lot of tumultuous period, especially for Southeast Asia, considering the fact that Southeast Asia is the region that is affected most severely by the U.S. tariff. But I think ASEAN has been quite quick in responding to the situation by upholding their commitment to the regional economic integration. So the coming event in the APEC is actually another confirmation of the commitment of the region for regional economic integration in facing of some of the geoeconomics and geopolitical challenges that we are facing. And this is, of course, going to be long-awaited commitment expressions from different countries, especially in Asia Pacific, to sort of like expand this this desire to have an open, inclusive, and also widely beneficial economic platform.
Well, John, if you look at the theme, as we mentioned earlier, so it's about shared growth. It's about cooperation, about innovation. Indeed, several leaders, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, South Korean leader Li Zaiming, and others also talked about solidarity and cooperation at a time of uncertainty. I think you do see the commitment, but it's really about how to do, right? For a lot of countries, they face the tariff, they face the pressure from Washington.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Because sorry.
Yeah, John, go ahead. Yeah.
So I think the theme is great, but of course the subtext of this is the disruption in global growth, in shared prosperity, and so forth. And that disruption, of course, comes from U.S. policy. So the United States has been promoting this something called a reciprocal fair trade frameworks, which is really a nice way of talking about the lack of a framework or the abandonment of any framework and its replacement by a transactional case-by-case coercion-based trade policy where tariffs are used as a weapon. So you see in this theme at APEC, but also at the ASEAN summit that just ended, which Donald Trump also attended, this dynamic at play, whether we go one way or the other. So the unspoken thing in all this is, will a rules-based, to use that term, form of trade persist and survive and continue in this most important region of the world economically?
During his keynote speech, President Xi said that we must practice true multilateralism and enhance the authority and the effectiveness of the multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core. I think the message is very clear. So Baocheng, the message is very clear. That is, we want to safeguard the multilateral trading system, and of course, WTO is the core body of this system. In order to safeguard the WTO, what needs to be done right now?
Well, I think the leaders will need to review and remind themselves of the two basic principles of WTO to address the fairness in global trade, which is the most favored nation treatment and also national treatment, and based on which through the reform, on the ground of the general agreement on trade and tariff, the WTO is now all-encompassing in terms of the trade, investment, intellectual property protection, and also trade in service. And more importantly, it is really the dispute settlement body that's really outshined itself against many other global treaties which are based on consensus and based on voluntary compliance. And now this core is important in the critical juncture that when unilateralism instead of the multilateralism is now looming large across the globe, primarily triggered by the United States. And also we refer highly of the particular issue that when the appellate body of the WTO has been paralyzed for the last 7 years without really nominating of the judge by the U.S. side. So therefore, there has to be certain type of reform to push forward for the functionality and recalibrate WTO. And of course, China is also proposing, among many other countries, that there needs to be a certain other type of reform to reflect the rising voice of the global South, and also to make it more transparent and up to speed with the new development, particularly with the digitization program that is going on over there. And also, I think it also a reminder to the Chinese players that we also need to reflect on ourselves in terms of compliance and in terms of accountability to those rules, and to push China to join more of the WTO rules, particularly in the government procurement program and also in the new digital program that is there to impact the existing and also the future trade structures.
Right. Christine, Chinese President Xi Jinping also stressed the need to stay on the right course of WTO reform, uphold fundamental principles such as the most favored nation and non-discrimination. And indeed, he also talked about update international economic and trade rules to reflect the changing times so as to better protect the legitimate rights and interests of developing countries. So of this group, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, most of the countries in Asia, they are part of these developing countries. So tell us more in that respect, no non-discrimination, most favored nations, and also the reforms. Christian, what's your take on that? What should be done probably to make sure and the WTO will remain viable and probably, to be followed, its rule in particular by members?
This call for the staying on course is definitely reflecting some of the regional countries' sentiments in trying to maintain a robust defense on having a rules-based multilateral framework against protectionism and or any unilateral actions that will undermine the existing WTO rules. In this case, in terms of the most favored nation rules and also the non-discrimination, is to ensure the fair trading system and also to maintain a smooth regional supply chains and also production chain that has been established for a long time. And of course, the type of improvement that we want is definitely a sign of reform. Reforming the existing platform, not replacing, because the existing platform has been somewhat unfair to a lot of countries in the global south. So improvement and also reform of this existing system, ranging from the most favored nation treatment, and also the inclusion of rules, clearer categories for the rules of origins, will definitely be something that the regional countries is looking forward to, especially with the fact that a lot of the tariff negotiations that are done bilaterally, a lot of them tend to be undermining the existing regional framework. It's not like we are completely against the bilateral negotiations or coordination. I think each country has their own national interest and also willingness to, mitigate the impact of this tariff that has been imposed by the United States. But at the same time, we need to remember that the regional, especially the rules-based multilateral framework, is the one thing that has sustained the economic growth and stability in the region, even during the COVID pandemic and during the sort of like the current situations with the U.S. tariff, etc. So I think with having this, by updating these rules for regional framework, will definitely be a strategic move, not just for China, but also for the overall region, so that we can sort of like reconsolidate the regional economic integration and support the growth of the every countries in the region as well.
Speak of multilateralism, and we also mentioned bilateral. I think one feature of the U.S. Trade policy is bilateral, right? Some say that gives the U.S. advantage because it's a large economy. When they talk to another country, usually smaller than the U.S., so they enjoy the advantage. It's easy to impose tariff, I guess. John, if you look at some of the recent deals the U.S. reached with Asian countries, with Malaysia, with Cambodia, for example, interestingly, there are some articles and clauses that says that the Asian countries have to agree to observe the U.S. entity list, and also they needed to follow the U.S. in implementing customs duties, quotas, fees on the third countries. I think it's very clear. It's targeting China, and it says if a country deepens relations with another that jeopardizes the essential U.S. interests, it would face more levies, more tariffs. So the tariff threat remains well alive here.
Yes, indeed. And I think the agreement that was just signed, the trade agreement that the U.S. just signed with Malaysia, is unfortunately a case in point here. It is a very curious document which ties Malaysian trade policy, and in fact also security policy in regard to digital technology, ties it completely to U.S. policy. So this is a disturbing trend that the U.S. is going around, making smaller nations, particularly a highly trade-dependent one, such as Malaysia, pushing them into agreements like this. It is by any measure a highly unequal agreement with very little or no reciprocity, truly extraordinary. So the impact of this actually is to create a kind of a two-track system in the region. It has made agreements such as frameworks such as the RCEP or RCEP more critical than ever, as a hedge against this kind of uncertainty and arbitrariness.
Right. Tell us more on that. You mentioned RCEP, John, more critical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. And so RCEP now, I think RCEP also met at the ASEAN summit. There was a sort of RCEP meeting as well.
The first
and
leaders
it framed
summit, right?
RCEP as yes. This was potentially a huge meeting. It was ASEAN, and there was the East Asia Summit, which usually goes back to back with it. But this year we had RCEP meeting, and RCEP was framed as a vital buffer against unilateralism and protectionism. So while the US market is critical and the volatility of US policy makes a rules-based framework for the remaining 30%, the other 30% of the global GDP, which is the RCEP bloc, it makes it essential as a kind of economic insurance policy or a track for sanity, for the type of framework that makes Asia what it is, that undergirds the prosperity of East Asia. So it has deep implications. Supply chain logics, for example, the efficiency of supply chain cannot be dictated by this sort of arbitrary, quote-unquote, security concerns against a third party. So agreements like this, which even as bilateral agreements are disturbingly one-sided or lopsided, full of third-party clauses, these are potentially harmful to the region, and they certainly, in my opinion, I think, make it more difficult now for Malaysia to engage in the multilateralism for which it is famous. This is deeply, saddening to me, and this is merely my opinion, and I hope this is not the last word on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, against such a background, Baocheng, if you look at the Chinese side, the response, not exact response, but in terms of this regional integration, President Xi mentioned about building a more open regional economic environment. He mentioned the trade pact, for example, the RCEP, as John said, and also the CPTPP, Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is adding new members. President Xi said, the two pacts could work more closely together to inject new momentum into building a free trade area of the entire Asia-Pacific region. As a vision first mentioned, proposed by the Chinese side in 2014 APEC leaders meeting in China. How do you view the Chinese proposed idea? Is still pushing for more integration, more free trade, and more inclusive, basically everybody in this region?
Yes, I think when he mentioned the WTO as a global trading platform, and then he's also proposing to further deepen the collaboration within the regional the trade framework. Actually, they are really reinforcing instead of exclusive to each other, be it the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership or CPTPP, or the deeper that is being very active and also practically implemented within the Asian Pacific region, are really bearing a lot more fruits. And the fact that the RCEP and CPTPP, they are really the fruition of the APEC type of meetings and discussions. So the inspiration is over there, and China is the active participant in that. And over the last meeting in Busan, I was also proposing that when China is really taking over the baton for next year, we can really, push forward for more impact that is there to benefit every participating the economies within the entire region. And because this is really a high consensus, but we need some metrics as to measure how we can really, deliver such sort of impact. And also, China can also propose more of the public goods that can continue to service the regional integration. And also, during the most recent communique from the Central Communist Party is that we are also streamlining our domestic market with unified rules, harmonized regulations. That's also better prepared to get connected with our neighbors within the Asian Pacific, and also the countries across the globe, in order to have a better collaboration with a higher level of transparency and predictability of the rules, not to mention the fairness and equal playing field.
Yeah, fairness here. Well, another important point, of course, being discussed, Christine, is the industrial chain, supply chain. President Xi called for maintaining the smooth flow of industrial and supply chains. Of course, he referred to this disruption of supply chains. And we have seen the recent upgrading of the free trade agreement between China and ASEAN countries. And part of that is to reinforce, to increase the resilience of the supply chain, in this region, China, Indonesia, China, Malaysia, etc. So how do you look at the prospect, what we should do probably to really strengthen this supply chain here?
You actually almost like you read my mind, because I was about to add the China-ASEAN Free Trade 3.0, recently upgraded one, into this these various initiatives, RCEP, CPTPP, and also FTAAP. And a lot of it is actually, and all of this framework is actually part of this effort for regional resilience, where regional resilience can create a stronger regional market, and also contributing to the further deepening of regional integration. And of course, this requires a very strong and also smooth flow of industrial and supply chain. And this is very much dependent on the kind of collaborations and connectivity in the production networks, in which, of course, especially in Asia, the Belt and Road initiatives has helped in forming the infrastructures and also other relevant elements to prop the desperately needed infrastructures in different parts of Asia. As you know, there has been a lot of infrastructure gap in different regions in Asia. The presence of Belt and Road has so far been able to reduce this gap. We're still hoping that this gap can be further reduced. But of course, this type of connectivity and collaboration will only promote the kind of sustainable and also sturdy industrial and supply chain. This is very much an indication of, I think, China's expressions of wanting to maintain this process is a kind of a relief, I guess, for the region, because amidst this uncertainty with global sort of like geopolitics and also the tariff, the impacts, not just the short term, but also the long term impact of the tariff, this type of signal is very much welcomed by a lot of countries in the region. Because I think not just China, Indonesia also wants to contribute in this leadership role in order to maintain the smooth sailing of connectivity and cooperation in the region, if not in Southeast Asia, but also the wider region of Asia Pacific.
One thing stands out during the meetings is the one between Chinese President Xi Jinping and the U.S. President Trump, where both sides agreed to take steps to further ease trade tensions. John, how do you see the impact of this meeting on, the relationship between the two largest economies and also probably in Asia-Pacific region here?
I think what we can get from the meetings, the positive part is an agreed pause to any further escalation of tariffs and restrictions. But I don't think any fundamental issues have been agreed upon. So I think that's all it is right now. A pause is welcome, but elsewhere things aren't staying still. As I said, the priority of things these arrangements such as RCEP and now the CPTPP and the China, especially the recently upgraded China-ASEAN Free Trade Area, these are absolutely urgent. They're not just nice to haves now. They are really critical to the prosperity of the region. Because while there may be some pause between China and the US, I think a lot more is going on that we should have to, that we need to be vigilant about in the partner countries in Southeast Asia and the rest of East Asia, with which, as I stress again, the US is a policy of picking on them one by one and creating these unequal bilateral arrangements with third-party clauses meant to exclude China. That continues apace. And unfortunately, my own country, Malaysia's example is now one that I would think should be avoided, where agreements are made that then impair our ability even to engage in other bilateral and multilateral arrangements. In effect, almost giving the US a veto, hitching our trade policy to US foreign policy goals. Every bilateral agreement is made in the context of the whole set of other bilateral and multilateral agreements that a country makes. So an extremely unequal arrangement with the US doesn't just impair our relationship with China, our trade relationship. It also disadvantages Australia, our free trade with Australia or with Europe. And these will then have to be renegotiated. So this kind of behavior, if it persists, is extremely destructive for the region and most especially for the supply chains that Christine was talking about. Those value chains, those supply chains are critical. Their efficiency is critical to the prosperity and then ultimately the security of the region.
Yeah, well, speak of that, we know that we live in a time of volatility. Baocheng, if you look at the countries closer to the U.S., for example, Canada, their leader, the Prime Minister Mark Carney, is also at the meeting. There is a meeting between President Xi and the Canadian leader. They talked about the bilateral relationship. President Xi said, we should make efforts to bring the relationship back on track. And the Canadian side said, constructive dialogue, we should have to address some of the issue. And also, if you look at their response to the U.S. tariffs, they say, Carney mentioned a goal to double their export beyond the U.S. market in the next 10 years to diversify away from the U.S. market. I mean, that's also a signal from some of the countries that are, used to be close to the U.S. as another direction, let's say, of the development.
Well, actually, before Donald Trump waved the magic wand of the tariff, nobody really cared about the flow of rare earth. Nobody cares about the Canadian-U.S. relationship because they are so much interlocked, and also the Canada also suffers from the trade deficit with the United States. So I think now we come to such a stage that Trump will have to remove all his spats, and he himself created. Now, I think he's doing that job. He's a good learner, when he touched upon the reality. And now, for other economies, be it the entire EU, China, Canada, etc., we can really make certain amendments. It's not really a compromise because, the collaboration also needs update, but it doesn't mean that we are going to be able to capitulate to such a sort of situation. Right. And those who really yield so easily was not really there to be sincerely responsible for further implementation.
Well, with that, we are coming to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also watch us on the CGTN app or on YouTube. I'm Xu Qingduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.